You are listening to a Cult Talk Network podcast.
File access granted.
Hello, all of you idealists, believers, skeptics, and all of those who question the universe around them. My name is Bailey.
And my name is Ty.
And we would like to welcome you to the first episode of Cult Talk's Conspiracy.
Yeah, the inaugural episode, File 001 on the books.
Yes, this has been very anticipated by a lot of our Cult Talk Net friends, a lot of the Cult Talk Net fans as well, who have reached out to us, and people who have, found that this new podcast was coming out through a lot of the other outlets, like Cult of Campbell and Cult of Lore.
Yep.
And that's been really cool to kind of see people stretching out and, finding what else is in our network. But this has been different for me and Tyler and really everyone in the whole Cult Talk Net family, because we've never had a podcast that's been anticipated before.
Right.
So that's been really exciting and a little nerve-wracking. I hope.
Yeah, we've always kind of dropped these shows out there and they kind of pick up a fan base and go from there, but we haven't had a show yet that we've like hyped and kind of built up and have people like anticipating, looking forward to. And it's really exciting, puts a lot of pressure on us just to kind of like make sure we bring that same level of quality that I think all of our shows have. I think all the Cult Talk Net shows, you can say what you will about the amount of fans we have, the amount of views we get, but I think one thing that can't be questioned is the quality of everything we do. And that's absolutely what Cult Talk Conspiracy hopes to continue, is that same expectation of quality.
It's been really good pressure too. Like it's the kind of pressure that we want to not only meet but also exceed your expectations. And
right.
We really hope that you guys love this. We love you guys for going along this journey with us. And if you listen to our preview episode, you know that this has been something that myself and Ty especially has been wanting to do for a really long time. So We're really excited to finally be doing this, finally bring it to you guys, and just do it.
Finally here, episode 001. And when we were kind of plotting out this, I was kind of surprised because, Bailey, she's going to be the first one to present a conspiracy here on Cult Talk Conspiracy. So we're doing it, the kind of way we're doing it is one episode she'll present, the next episode I'll present, and so on and so forth. And Bailey, you're starting off with like a big one. I was kind of surprised, but I mean, a fitting way to begin. But I mean, I was kind of surprised. This is a heavy subject.
This is a heavy one, and this is probably going to be one that we come back to in the future as well. I know you guys have been waiting for a really long time. This is Roswell, the crash. So we are starting it all the way back where it began, and I'm really excited for this one. And I've learned a lot about this one. This was actually, so I'm a really big person in the tinfoil hat brigade. That word, yeah. And so I'm obsessed with aliens and UFOs. I'm a true believer in aliens, and that all comes pretty much from my dad. My dad made us listen to the old War of the Worlds radio broadcast, and was like, "It's real," because that's what his dad did to him. So of course he had to do it to us, and that was the start of it. And he's fully aware that he's the reason for this obsession, which is really, really cool. So when, we found out we were doing this and everything, he told me, well, I just went to Roswell not too long ago, and then he didn't take me. So now we're going to have to go back.
Bummer.
Now we're going to have to go back. But like the town of Roswell has like totally embraced this.
I love that. I really do. I love like seeing pictures of that, of Roswell and how much they embrace it. That's the smart way to do it. I mean, embrace the legends and embrace the things that, make put your town on the map. Because
it really does. Like they have a whole UFO and alien museum. There's like there's a UFO diner that's like 50s themed with a bunch of like UFOs and whatnot. So it's really cool. I really want to go one day. I think my dad and I might make a vacation trip out there, and then I'll talk to Cult Talk Net boys. And
oh, I'd love to go out there. That's like one of the places I'd love to go. One of my dream trips out to Roswell. I'd love to go out there. Roswell, I mean, this right here, the crash, I mean, what we're going to focus on. So, I mean, like Bailey said, this is probably something we're going to come back to many times, because Roswell, on the surface, it's just a UFO crash. to what
Right.
most people know. But there is so much that comes from Roswell. I mean, as fitting as it is for this to be the first file here on Cult Talk Conspiracy, because just like this show, this is file one, so many episodes are going to follow this. And in real life, Roswell kind of kicked off so much. There's just so much things that you can follow, and they lead back to Roswell. And it kind of kicked off, in my opinion, kind of the conspiracy culture. I mean, it's far from the very first conspiracy, but this really like popularized it and brought it into the mainstream.
Oh, absolutely. There's still theories coming out of it to this day. And I mean, like I was telling you earlier, like I was doing some extra research, and there's stuff still being found like as late as 2011 from that crash site. So like it's crazy to think
Yeah.
of this one. It's absolutely insane.
I'm always kind of shocked at like the date, like when Roswell happened. 'Cause it's crazy. It's like
Yeah.
the 40s, right?
Yeah, 47.
And that's just wild. For some reason, every time I think of Roswell, I always think of, I don't know, like the 60s. I don't know why.
Yeah, because I'm of that same level too, and maybe it's because like the 60s seemed sooner, or I don't know, but I always think that same thing. I always want to say that it happened in like the 1960s
Right.
instead of the 40s. But yeah, no, 1947. We're gonna get into all the things that were happening during that time, how the events surrounding that time period, being in the mid to late 1940s, going into the 1950s,
Yep.
really affected the stories and whatnot that came out of Roswell. But Ty, I think they're ready. I think I'm ready.
Think you're ready to disclose file 001 here on Cult Talk Conspiracy?
Oh yes, yes, yes. We are ready to unseal this file. So, do you remember when you first heard about the Roswell crash?
I really can't put a finger on it, like when I first heard about it. It's like in like growing up, like my dad was like always into like the UFO stuff. Like he's not really that kind of person either. Like he's not like a sci-fi person, but for some reason he and I just always watched like things like Unsolved Mysteries, and there was a lot of shows like that in the 90s. And I
Yeah.
remember watching those and being subjected to some of the stories from Roswell. And I was very young when I first heard about Roswell. But I can't really put a finger on when I first heard about it, but it's something that's always been with me. Like I've always been interested in this kind of stuff. So like I've always had Roswell like in my ether somewhere.
Awesome. I actually found out about it like as a teenager.
Really?
Yeah, yeah. As a teenager, I had just found out about like the weather balloon story, and that was it. And then like becoming an adult, and like my like I said, my dad got me into UFOs and aliens and stuff like that. So we were having a conversation, and I started looking more into alien crash landings and what people had found, and then I found the Roswell crash landing. So then I learned the whole story about Roswell. Well, not really the whole story, but really just kind of the gist of it, because I feel
Right.
like nobody really knows the whole story at what
Oh,
happens.
absolutely.
So that was how I got introduced to it. And then like honestly, like there's still books that are on my Audible wait list that I'm going to read about Roswell, because there's just so much information. And like I said, we're definitely gonna have to come back, but this is the crash, and how we're gonna get there. The location of the crash actually happened in southeastern New Mexico in Shaves County, which is actually 75 miles north of Roswell. But the thing that was interesting about Roswell, and why I believe that it was taken to Roswell, is because of the Army airfield base that was there.
Okay.
So let's get into the how and why. So in July of 1947, a rancher by the name of W.W. Mac Brazel, will be known as Mac from here on out, lives in this ranch house and on this land 75 miles north of Roswell. And he found these debris of rubber strips, tin foil that, looked like it couldn't be wrinkled. Like it
Okay.
just it would not wrinkle, and thick paper. He calls up Sheriff George Wilcox of Roswell and is like, "Hey, you need to come out here. I don't know what this is."
See, I always like anytime I like look into the stuff about Roswell, like or see things on History Channel, because History Channel has so many of those Roswell recreations on there.
Yeah, that
Uh,
the History Channel was involved in a lot of my research for
yeah,
that.
I always resonates with me the foil, because I know that's always a big piece of the wreckage.
The thing that got me this time was the thick paper that they're talking about. Jesse Marsall, who we'll get into in a minute, actually says that it is more of like a metal, but it couldn't be scratched, it couldn't be damaged, and like they said, they even tried to take a sledgehammer to it, and it left no marks, no dents, not even a scratch.
Now
So,
there's photos of this stuff out, right? I mean,
yeah,
there's
yeah,
yeah.
there
So
is.
I remember there's like a famous picture of like them with it kind of looks like it's sprawled out on someone's living
Yeah.
room, like they
Oh
living
yeah.
room floor, like they have it laid out, and you can see like the foil and all the little bits and bobs of debris that they've pulled together.
Yeah, and it really does just look like, rubber remnants, and it does
Yeah,
look like this sheet of tin
like a
foil.
pile of junk they have pulled
Yeah,
out.
yeah, you wouldn't know what you were looking at. You would just think like, "Oh, it's some sort of debris or trash."
Which you'd expect from wreckage, I
Oh,
feel like that comes hand in hand with it being wreckage. It's going to be pretty discernible.
yeah, and so Sheriff George Wilcox gets these, and then he turns the debris over to Colonel William Blanchard, who was the commanding officer of the Roswell Army Airfield, which will be known as the RAAF. I'm probably going to stutter a lot on that. So,
The
and then
RAF,
RAF. I wish they called it RAF. Do they call it RAF? Am I reading it wrong? I don't
RAF,
know.
they
You
could. I mean, I'll call it
know,
RAF. I
yeah.
mean, it
If
makes it
if
easier.
you know it's RAF for sure, like, let us know in the comments, y'all. I wanna know
Well, if
because
we say RAF, we're referring to the RAAF, which
yeah,
is the Roswell.
the Roswell Army Airfield.
Yeah, the Roswell Army Airfield, aka RAF.
So the very next day, so after getting these debris and, kind of examining them and looking through them, the very next day after the items were examined by
Hmm.
multiple different people, and especially by the Roswell Army Airfield, they came out with this statement. It says, the many rumors regarding the flying disc became a reality yesterday when an intelligence officer of the 509th Bomb Group of the 8th Air Force Roswell Army Airfield was fortunate enough to gain possession of a disc through the cooperation of one of the local ranchers and the sheriff's office in Shaves County. Now, that is important because that was released by the RRAF. This is a
Right,
military organization that is confirming that they have something not of this earth.
right, and that was the July 8th, 1947 issue of the Roswell Daily Record. And I think the interesting thing I always find about this era when Roswell happened, really. So Roswell happened 1947, and the interesting thing is they call it a flying disc, which
Yeah.
we now would know as a UFO, or I think the new term is UAP, unknown aerial phenomena. That's the new term for it. So the interesting thing about that is that when this happened, this was only a few weeks, I believe, after the Kenneth Arnold incident. Now, Kenneth Arnold was a commercial pilot, I believe, who
Mhm.
basically said he saw a whole fleet of flying discs. That's what he referred to it as. And that's kind of like the first real big American mainstream UFO sighting, or reported UFO sightings. It came from a very reputable source,
Mhm.
Kenneth Arnold, and we still had not even camped with the term. It hadn't even happened enough where we had a solid term for it. It was just these flying discs is
Is a
all we
thing.
knew these things were.
So, for those who don't know, what did happen to Kenneth Arnold? Was he kind of like, dismissed, like you don't know what you saw, or
No, I don't know what happened. I haven't really followed Kenneth Arnold. I haven't like researched him, but I just know Kenneth Arnold was one of the first the first major UFO sightings that was reported
nice,
and kind of carried by the mainstream,
nice.
is because he was a commercial pilot. I think the story goes he was flying, and through the clouds there just came like a whole fleet of UFOs, or flying discs, as he called them.
Ooh, it's
And
crazy.
that kind of introduced the idea of UFOs to the mainstream.
Oh yeah, and probably where we got the now infamous term flying saucer.
Right.
I I knew flying saucer before I knew UFO as a kid, because it sounded cool.
Yeah.
Um, So along with this, very catching article or very catching headline that was released in the Daily Record or in the Roswell Daily Record, it also showed a photograph of Major Jesse Marcel, who oversaw the investigation. And he's sitting there. He is the gentleman in the uniform sitting there with the debris in hand and is kind of looking up like I don't know what this is. And he was actually the first official at the Roswell crash. He was the first one on site. He's been there from beginning to end. So just to give you a little bit of context about who he is, he was a World War II vet who would later play a huge role in the post-war atomic bomb test. He was not a normal soldier. He actually enlisted in 1924 for the Louisiana National Guard after him and his wife had their first child in 1936. He took
Okay.
another 3 years in the Texas National Guard. And then in 42, Marcel was a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Air Force. And then that summer, he would attend the Army Air Force Intelligence School when he would graduate and be promoted to instructor in 1943.
So
Definitely.
this guy was like a real soldier. Like he was like a
Yeah,
GI Joe.
he's not your average GI Joe, but yeah, he's dealing with high powered bombs, and like he really does play a major part in atomic bomb research and testing
Okay.
later on in his career. So I mean, what he's doing is big. He's got a really high security clearance, and he's worked really hard to get that, and proved it so. So in 1943, he was promoted to instructor, and then Marcel was then assigned to the 5th Bomber Command in the Southwest Pacific. And there he would receive 2 air medals and a Bronze Star. So very
Nice.
accomplished.
Yeah, for real.
And then in 1945, Marcel received the rank of major. So now Major Jesse Marcel. In 46, Major Marcel also became a part of the 509th Bomber Group, a group that formed for the testing of atomic bombs. Now, this is very interesting because the 509th was not a normal group, not only to the US, but kind of to the world.
Okay.
So at this time in America's history in 1947, or when he became a part of the 509th in 46, so just a year before, we were engaged in a Cold War with Soviet Russia. And at the time, the US was the only country in the world to have nuclear weapons. So not only was Major Jesse Marcel's job super specific and super kind of outside of the box, the entire 509th Bomb Group was totally out there and basically the only nuclear bombing group in the world, one interviewer said.
And nuclear bombs, just like nuclear research, I mean, that does play a lot into this time period, and also with the sudden spurge of UFO and alien activity, in a lot of people's mind is that's kind of what draws this sudden resurgence or sudden insurgence of all this activity, is because we as a species started meddling in this very, very powerful new form of energy, nuclear energy.
Oh,
and
absolutely.
that's what drew these outside forces to Earth, is that we're now meddling in something that's very powerful, very dangerous, that we know very little about.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, this was a really very tense time, not only for the US, but kind of for the world too, because I mean, you think about it, World War II had just ended.
Right.
The US had just dropped a bomb on Japan, and they had also tested 2 other bombs in the middle
Yeah.
of the ocean. So, I mean, the US is just out here with their dick out.
Yeah.
Basically, like, fuck with
Dropping
us.
bombs everywhere. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, honest. I mean, It's insane. It's even crazier when you realize like how little we actually knew what we were messing with. We knew very little about this stuff, and we still like there's still a lot of questions about nuclear energy and its capabilities. And at this time in 1940s, and we're out here just dropping bombs like everywhere. I mean, it's pretty wild. We're dropping them in the desert here in our own country.
I know.
We're testing bombs like just in people's backyards. It's wild.
It's terrifying. The nuclear bomb towns always freak me out.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Do they call them TNT towns? Is that what it is?
I think so. Maybe.
I don't know. But those always freak me out. They're the makeshift houses with mannequins everywhere that is made to like look like a day in the town.
Yeah,
You just drop a bomb there.
Nuketown from
Nuketown.
Call of Duty.
There we go.
Everyone's favorite level in Call of Duty. Yeah,
Nice.
that one. Yeah, that stuff's always really weird. But yeah, a lot of people believe that just us meddling with that stuff is what draws a lot of this activity, because there is a sudden spike in UFO alien activity that correlates with the sudden spike in our just usage of nuclear energy.
Oh, absolutely. Do you think maybe like they kind of thrive off nuclear energy and that's why they get brought here? Like,
I don't know. I don't know. That's never been so. I've always kind of considered it being like, they are a far more advanced being than what we are. I mean, obviously they're flying, ships across the galaxy, and I feel like they have at one point, being a far more advanced species, probably at one point meddled with nuclear energy, and they know the ramifications of it.
Oh yeah,
and maybe they're here trying to warn us or stop us from maybe making mistakes they may have made in the past. I've always kind of thought that was kind of interesting. I've never really thought of aliens as a malevolent presence. I don't know why. I've never really thought of them as being like here to invade, because I feel like if aliens wanted to, they could very easily invade if they wanted to.
Yeah, I feel like they would have done it at Roswell, and we either would or would not be here talking about it.
I always think about, there's a very famous quote from Stephen Hawking's where he warns about us sending radio signals into space and things like that, and trying to communicate with extraterrestrials. Where he says that it's not a good idea because in our past, human past, there's never been an instance where we have encountered a lower species and not immediately invaded. You know what I mean? Because that's happened many a times with Native Americans here in the United States. When colonial Englishmen came over here and they invaded and killed mass populations of Native Americans, took their land. But there are things that you see in human history where we do have certain tribes or people, indigenous people, that we don't interfere with, that we kind of see as this like pure sighting. We just kind of observe. And I wonder if that's a lot of like what may be happening with aliens.
I don't know. I'm happy for the friendly ET. I would like to keep the ETs friendly with us if they're out there.
Right. So now, I don't know if they feed off of it, but I think they're very interested in what we're doing.
Definitely. Because there was a lot happening at this time with UFO sightings. There was UFO sightings happening pretty much all over the place, especially over, kind of these TNT areas and whatnot, and continue to happen in different TNT areas afterwards. So there's definitely some sort of correlation there.
Because it's kind of like, I don't know, like at this point we were kind of like a toddler with a handgun. It's kind of like we're like, you know what I mean? Like it's kind of what it was like with the way we were just treating nuclear energy, and maybe it just kind of drew their their response to maybe kind of intervene a little bit. But
maybe I don't know. Well, that'll probably be a podcast. That'll probably be a Cult Talks conspiracy, to be honest with you, because I would love to keep going on this, but we got to get back to what Major Jesse Marcel is doing here.
Exactly.
Like I said, Major Jesse Marcel was the first one on the scene. He was actually in charge of taking these debris to the military bases where they can be further examined and kind of, done whatever with after they go into government property power. Anyway, but before he stopped at the base, Jesse stopped at his house for a little show and tell, and thank God he did. So he actually got his son and his wife up. His son said it was very, very late at night, but his dad was just, like he was wound for sound. And he's saying, look at this. This is from a flying saucer. This is from a flying disc. And the son was actually able to recall that there were hieroglyphic writings, what he said, on what looked like a beam. And later in life, it looks like it was 3D printed, but they were able to sort of recreate from memory what this beam looked like,
Oh, wow.
hieroglyphics and all. And I mean, it looks, it's a bunch of circles and triangles and, geometric shapes and whatnot. It's very, very interesting, and no one can really make it out, is the thing.
Wow.
And that's always been the weird part, but you never see that beam anywhere. Like you never see any, like they make reference to the, how did they word it here? The rubber strips, but you never hear about any sort of hard beam pipe, anything like that. So that I found very strange, because that didn't correlate with, what we've heard for so long. So it's like, okay, now you got my attention. So we've talked about Major Marcel's history and whatnot. So there's a man over top of Major Marcel by the name of General Roger M. Ramey. And he, after receiving Major Marcel receiving his Bronze Star, actually wrote a letter of condemnation praising Marcel's performance, not only during that, but also during Operation Crossroads. And he also received another one from Major General W.E. Kepner. So not only does he know what he's doing, he's got a high security clearance, he's earned his rank, but he's also well recommended as well. So This is a stand-up guy, is what we're looking at here. Very, very reputable. It was even more so in December of 1947. After Roswell, he was promoted to lieutenant colonel, which I've got theories about that, but we're going to get into that later. So not long after the news broke, so we're back in July 1947, not long after the news broke of the UFO being found, it was quickly rescinded. The Army officials recanted the RAF's statement, saying the disc was a weather balloon.
That is always that's kind of what makes this whole thing conspiracy fuel, is because for a major government organization to make a statement, even like on, to even make a statement in the first place, is a huge deal, because that doesn't just get jotted down on a piece of paper and sent off to the presses. Like that goes through some channels. And for the RAF to confidently put out a statement that we have in our possession a flying disc, like that had to have went through many channels and gotten approved by many people. At least a few. I mean, at least a few people had to have approved that and let it go through to press.
Oh, absolutely.
And then just to rescind it.
Even like in my own organizations that I work in, because I'm not just with Cult Talk Net. I'm also on various different boards in my community, and even myself as a public figure, like I have statements, or I'm a part of releasing statements that pass through my hands and then 10 other people's hands, and that's just on a small local level. To put it on a national military level, that's got to be, I would say, 25, 50 people maybe.
It had to have went through a lot of different. I mean, to come from for a statement to come from and be representative of a branch of our military's air base. I mean, that had to have went through a lot of different channels, and it gets released then, and then for them to just be like, "Oh, never mind, we were mistaken to do that." That is conspiracy fuel, because there's obviously some shady stuff at foot for that to happen.
Yeah, it's kind of like when mom accidentally walks in with the Christmas presents and he has to go, "Oh, nope, these are not what you think they are. No, no, no."
Right,
no.
right.
So remember, it's actually Brigadier General, my apologies, Roger Ramey, who praised, Major Marcel for his amazing work. He actually said in the Corsicana Daily Sun, the bundle of foil, broken wood, and rubber remnants were the crushed remains of a ray wind target used to determine the detection and velocity of winds at high altitudes.
Yeah, this
and this was someone that was over him, and had trusted him and worked with him before in the past. And just to add insult to injury, a forecaster, with the Army's Air Force Station, Warrant Officer Irving Newton, said, "We use them because they go much higher than the eye can see." And then, to put salt in the wound, Captain Sheridan Cabot, Major Marcel's junior ranking officer, also confirmed the weather balloon story.
Yeah. Now this was would later be known as Project Mogul, is what they called this.
Yes.
So this was a project had to do with high altitude balloons, and I think they were trying to detect sound waves from Soviet bomb tests.
Yeah, they were trying to figure out if the USSR, they were detecting sound waves at high altitudes, and the balloons were strung together and they had microphones placed on them. And this was so the US government could monitor the Soviets' progress and results of atomic bomb tests if there were any.
Right.
But to me, the thing about Project Mogul that made pretty much no sense was that, I mean, I guess like I wasn't out and about at that time, so like I don't know if there was like a real call to bring it back up, because to me, going from 1947 saying, oh, it's just a weather balloon, to in 1994 when they released the information about Project Mogul and it being a weather balloon and a spy device, or a spy device more than a weather balloon. I don't know. Like I would have to look at like.
I mean, I kind of see him being a difference in eras, because you got to think of, like, we're talking about Project Mogul being one of the main purposes of it was to detect and help kind of observe whether or not the Soviets were testing bombs, and if they were, how successful were they. And this was like prime Cold War era, and the idea of like flying saucers, what made that made things so much scarier, because at this time people were already worried about the Soviet Union dropping bombs on major cities. Like, that was something they had to do back in the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah.
Was, you see all these old videos and old film of them having to do like the drills, where they get underneath their desks,
Oh,
the air raid sirens. So to then introduce this unknown threat of these flying objects above our heads that we don't know what they are, that would cause, I imagine at this time, on a country already on the verge of panic, that would have set things over if the government was to come out and say, yeah, we don't know what these are. So I think that's part of the reason why the flying saucer, of course, the larger thing is they wanted to cover if they had one. But I think another thing of why they came out so quickly and were like, actually, we don't have a flying saucer, it's this, is to kind of qualm those concerns, because I feel like that would just added a lot more fuel to the fire for this. Our country was already in fear at this time.
Oh yeah.
The Red Scare, I think they call that, right? The Soviet.
Yes. Yeah. And then to, go almost 50 years later and bring it back up and say it was a spy device. We were keeping a close eye on, the Soviets' progression of the atomic bomb, of their own atomic bomb construction, and trying to figure out what was going on there. Also, something that may have had to do with this coming back up into the media is the Marcel family wasn't exactly being quiet about what happened to Major Jesse Marcel. Jesse Marcel himself has gone on the record and has adamantly stated that the items that he is photographed with in the Roswell Daily Record is not what he found in the field that night or that day. He has told this to his children, to his grandchildren, and it plays even more so with the beam that they were able to reconstruct from memory, because it was never found, or it was never shown to the public either. But
oh wow,
they have been super adamant about this. And at this point, it was Jesse Marcel's son is quoted as saying that, at this point when he's kind of starting to see all this happen, where, they're taking away what he actually found and taking pictures of this other like kind of nonchalant stuff, is when he's starting to realize that he may be the fall guy for this. He's had his whole career to work for. He's a very intelligent man. He's, got everything, going for him. He's, playing his cards right. He's trying to be like, no, this is the truth. And in the book that was actually written by Jesse Marcel Jr., Jesse Marcel's son, The Roswell Legacy, the first thing in the introduction they say is he just wanted the truth to come out. And that's scary. Like, excuse me?
I mean, the thought of being the fall guy, and that had to have been a scary thing,
Oh, absolutely.
you're going to be the fall guy for this huge, incident that's kind of became, a major part of our country's history.
Oh,
And they're
absolutely.
going to take, and the fear of being the fall guy for all that had to have been just terrifying.
And that's why I think he got promoted.
That
That's
could
that's why I
could
think
be.
he got promoted at the end of the year. They were like, "You know what? We have really kicked you in the ass really hard. We're gonna give you a promotion and hopefully some extra pay." I'm saying
Uh,
hopefully because I don't know. But,
I think it's
I
very
mean, hey,
small
like,
pay.
it's the government. But, like, I just there's so many questions around it, but I felt so bad for poor Major Jesse Marcel or Lieutenant Colonel Jesse Marcel because, oh, like, he just wanted the truth. He truly just
Yeah.
wanted the truth.
Yeah, it's like a guy who was very took his job very seriously, and at the end of the day, just wanted to find out what actually happened. Yeah,
Yes, well accomplished, very
yeah.
well accomplished.
So I've really never looked into like the I guess the players in the Roswell incident, so I didn't really look into Jesse Marcel that much. But that's sounds like a
When you start
pretty interesting
looking at
guy.
the players, it gets really, really cringy because it's like, "Oh, they what happened to this person?" So,
Really?
like, we're gonna get into this next one. So, in 1990, now we're jumping to 1990.
Okay.
There was an interview that was conducted by government officials with W. Glenn Dennis. We're just gonna call him Glenn.
Okay.
He was a Roswell mortician and funeral home director and, worked and lived in Roswell pretty much his whole life. So he was actually called by the RAAF officials, the officials who were on the site of the Roswell crash landing, picking up the debris and whatnot. So he's getting calls from these people. And he first says the first call he got asked if embalming fluid would change the chemical makeup of a person or something.
Hmm.
Okay, off the wall question, but okay. And
Very, very.
he said he offered to come out because he not only was the Roswell mortician, he also had a contract with the RAF at this time. He was the person that dealt with all of the bodies that came in from, unfortunate crash landings or, like directed the funerals of that. So he has that contract. This is part of his job. Not only is it happening in his town, it's a part of his job as well. Like, this is his livelihood. So he offers to come out and is like, "Hey, if you've got something, I'll come on out and assist you." But he was told that all the information that they were gathering from him was just for future reference. He didn't end up going to the base that night, but he kept getting calls like, how do we protect this a body from the elements? They didn't say this body; it was just a body from the elements. And they're like, "Well," and he's saying, "Well, if you can't do embalming fluid, I would suggest you go to the ice creamery and ask for as much dry ice as you can get." Which to me is so crazy because it's like they have dry ice.
Right. Well,
Like,
he's back in back in
what
the
is
40s.
this?
They didn't have just like refrigerators. So I imagine that makes sense. Like,
Dry ice is cold, man. I once
yeah.
stuck dry ice to my tug, and that was not fun. That I had a Christmas story moment at that point. Uh, but yeah, that's crazy to me to go to the ice creamery and get a block of dry ice and just pack the body on top of it because I mean it had been introduced to the elements at that point for several days now was pretty much the gist of it. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. So after he receives the calls, he stated that he was curious, but he never he didn't want to go out to the base. He didn't want to interfere where he wasn't needed nor really wanted to be because it sounded like they had a lot going on there. But he ended up going to the base when an injured airman showed up at the parlor. I believe he had a broken arm. And then Glenn ended up taking him to the emergency room hospital that was on the base. So at the hospital, once he gets, the airman all well and taken care of, he decides that he has this friend that he wants to go say hi to, this nurse friend of his. She's very new to the base. She's, only been there a few weeks. And it was kind of cute watching him talk about her because you know how older men get when they talk about somebody they like, and they're just like, "Oh, she's a nice person." It's just really sweet. I don't know, but I don't know. I don't know. I hope he fancied her. That would have been a cute story. But so he decides he's going to say hello to his friend there, and he finds his friend, He's walking up, he's saying hello, and her reaction is, "What are you doing here? Like, you need to leave." right now. Like you're going to get in trouble. You got to go. So he's looking at her like she's got four heads and is like, what are you talking about? Like, I'm fine. I'm not even doing anything. And then before too long, there are MPs that are coming up and talking to him saying, sir, you need to go on ahead and leave. This is a secured area. And from what he gathers in the interview, you know, there was some sort of back and two, but he does end up leaving, being escorted out by the MPs actually. So
Wow.
yeah, big to do. That to me would have automatically been like, oh, okay, what the hell's going on here? Or, you know, maybe they have a VIP client, like a high level politician or something that they don't want people knowing about.
Right.
But his nurse friend does say to him that she wants to meet him for lunch in the officers club, which is in a different section of the hospital than the emergency room they were in. So he goes down to the officers club because, I mean, he works with them, so he's able to get in and out of these places. So she meets him in the officers club, and before she will tell him anything, she makes him swear a sacred oath. And she said that she wanted him to swear this sacred oath because she was afraid of how much trouble she would get in if someone knew she talked about this. So it wasn't a matter of if she was going to get in trouble. It was a matter of how much trouble am I going to get in.
Okay. So she made him swear an oath.
She made him swear an oath that he never broke. And he never, to this day, if he's still alive, I'm not sure, revealed her name because you cannot find this nurse's name anywhere. So he's never told anybody, or it's never been released who this nurse was, which is adorable. I love when there's a little bit of romance in these conspiracies. She went on to say, after he swore the secret oath, she said there were 3 bodies. 2 of them were mangled, quote unquote, and one of the bodies were decent. Decent as in they could make out features. So she described them as they smelled. The odor was actually so bad it would make the doctors and her sick. They would actually have to go in shifts and work on the aliens. And at this point, they're doing an autopsy. And they're going in shifts and doing this because they're just gagging and they're getting sick and the smell is just protruding and it's terrible. And the way she got brought into this was kind of fucked up too, because she was actually going around just trying to get supplies. And the doctors pulled her into this room and were like, oh, hey, we need you. Come in here now. And then like would not let her leave. And it was just her and then the 2 doctors were working on this. So she was literally pulled into this mess, which is really sad. I felt bad for her. So they had this horrible smell. They had very long forearms. They were actually longer than their bicep and they were very skinny. They had skinny fingers with no fingernails, suction cups on their fingers, like a octopus, like a
Octopus.
Yes, the octopus tentacle that has the suctions on the bottom of it. It looked like that. They were mostly made of cartilage, not bone. They had large heads and eyes, and they also stood 3 to 4 feet tall. It's
so
really
the little green men.
the little green men. Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly. That smell really bad, apparently.
Yeah. Well, I
So
imagine their body chemistry is totally different than ours. So
Oh, probably.
I imagine if anything, there would be, it'd smell a lot different than what we'd be used to. So
probably. And they were out in the elements for at least a day or so. So, you know, who knows what happens at that point, you know,
Right.
whether they're I don't know, but they was stanky.
It's just crazy. It's something I think is interesting about that is, they were out in the elements for a good time. And it doesn't appear anything I've ever read that, they had any sort of, I would say, like predatory damage. There was, they're in a desert. The desert has a lot of predators. I feel like a coyote or something, a snake or something would have smelled. Bird, of course. Yeah, vultures. I mean, are thick in the desert. They'll seek out anything they can eat.
Oh,
absolutely. And I think it's interesting that none of these bodies had any sort of predatory damage, and it probably does come into play that they do have this off-putting odor, and it's just something that probably any animal really wouldn't recognize, would probably know to steer clear of it.
Yeah, it may even be like a defense mechanism too.
Could be,
like sweats it out or something. I don't know, but there's a lot there on why did it stink, what made it stink, because it was never differentiated between like did it smell only when it was opened up, or did it smell just in general, like opened or closed? That's always the question I've had
Right.
is, did it stink when it opened or when it was just there?
I
I don't
imagine it's probably both. I mean, like I said, it's probably just a total, probably just shock to your all your senses. I mean, here's a being that is not of this world any manner. So I mean, its chemistry and its body and the fluids and everything about it is totally, for lack of a better word, alien to what we're used to. So I feel like it would be a total shock to your senses and probably would be off putting. Have you ever seen the autopsy video? I know I've
You know
mentioned to you
what?
before. You ever watched that?
Yes, I actually did try to find it. I could not find the actual video, but I found several interviews about the video that showed clips of it.
Yeah.
So I found like little snippets of it, but not the whole thing.
Yeah,
Uh,
that came out in the '90s. I know that was a big deal when it came
it's
out.
crazy.
The some people believe it to be a hoax, other people don't. But the video came out in the '90s of this autopsy on supposedly one of the bodies from the Roswell crash.
Mhm.
Very interesting. If it is a hoax, very well done. They do a
Really
lot
well
of very
done.
very good attention to detail, and they make it seem authentic. To where if it is a hoax, it's very believable the way they execute it. So
Oh yeah. Oh,
if anyone
absolutely.
hasn't seen it, I suggest looking it up. It should be able to find it somewhere.
And then post the link so that I can watch the full thing. She even drew a picture of the being. So not only do we have a very graphic, detailed account, we now have a photo of it. And what she saw was very similar, almost exact to the alien head and body that we now see in mainstream media, the little green men. But the number one thing that she said, and this was said by Major Jesse Marcel, this is said by her, this is said by quite a few people who have seen things from the Roswell crash landing. She said it was something no one had ever seen, and it was definitely not human. And Major Jesse Marcel takes that pretty much all the way down to his grave, that what I saw was not of this earth and it was not human. When I hear that, like, it's not human, like that already, kind of tweaks my brain a little bit. Like, oh shit.
Right.
Now there's something here. Also, I get excited because I'm like, what's here? But then I get terrified when it's like, oh, he took that to his grave. Okay. That's serious. Like
uh,
that proves how serious this person is about
yeah.
it.
Yeah, because I
So,
mean, for him to take out to his grave, I mean, he obviously knew that there was, some cause for alarm and some, a good reason not to, open his mouth about it. So,
oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, it does speak for, him, his character at least, that he did take it to his grave.
Oh yeah, and I mean, and he was adamant about it. In the books and interviews and anywhere that you look up Jesse Marcel or even his family, they're all very adamant that he's not only telling the truth, but what he saw was not from this earth. And you know and mainly the items that he's photographed with in the Roswell Daily Record are not what he brought home that evening, is the biggest thing. And that's part of the most disturbing part that I found with his case, is that the debris actually got switched out, and we may not actually know what was there. We may not
Uh,
have actually seen it.
so the pictures that we talked about earlier, I mean, that it could have just been just junk. I mean,
It
for all
could
we
have.
know, just garbage they pulled out on the floor and just have something to take a picture of.
Oh yeah, it totally could have. And that's terrifying. That's the part I actually hope is not true, because then that means that people are that there's an agency like intentionally hiding stuff. Yes, I use
Which I
the
mean,
it's the
I
government.
mean, I could see it. I
I
mean,
can
I
see
think
it
that.
too, but I want to be trusting. But I'm not.
uh,
I'm always questioning. I'm not. That's why we're here. So 2 days later, Glenn, because we're back to Glenn Davis. So Glenn is worried for his nurse friend. 2 days later, he went in one day to go see her. Oh, she's sick. She's not here. Went in the next day, finds out that she's actually been transferred to a different base. And this was really unusual because she had not even been at the base for a full month. She'd only been there for 3 months. She had not been there for a very long time. So the nurse actually did leave an EPO. So this was like an address of a way to contact her and a way to, send letters back and forth. Basically like an international PO box. And what she said on this note, which was, clearly very quickly jotted down and handed off to him, is that she says, "I can't right now, but I will later," and sends the EPO address with it. And, he writes her and is saying, "Hey, how are you? Why the sudden transfer? Just kind of like what's going on questions."
Right.
And then a month later, the letter actually comes back, the very one that he sent, as a return to sender. And it was actually stamped in red letters, "deceased,"
Oh,
on
wow.
the letter. Come to find out, the nurse friend was actually killed in a training accident with 5 other nurses.
Wow. What kind of
Yeah.
training accident? Like, do they ever go into detail? Like, what?
No, it's just a training accident. They believe that they were over England somewhere. I believe South England.
Okay.
I believe. So and it's just crazy to him because he is like, first of all, she was just here. Second of all, there's so many questions. And if it wasn't
Yeah.
an accident, or if it really was an accident, boy, this looks bad.
Right.
Because I think something happened to her, because she was afraid. She made him swear like a sacred oath to not tell anyone, and then she suddenly transferred out, and something happens to her. I'm not saying the something happened to her was the on purpose part, but they definitely got her the fuck out of there, and we're like, she cannot talk to anyone. She's got to go.
That's wild.
Okay, so years later, after all of this has happened, the funeral home was sold, and Gled said he actually went back for his military and personnel files, which he remembers very clearly. You can see in the interview, he remembers it very clearly. He knows exactly the cabinet it's in. He knows the color of the cabinet. He knows the drawer it's in. He knows how far back it is in the drawer. Like, he knows it. When he went back to go recover these files, they were gone. He actually said they had been destroyed. But he never really goes into why he says they were destroyed. So I'm going to go with they were gone. But it had details of what had happened that day in it as well, which is really interesting. So that's the story of the nurse and W. Glenn Davis. So now, are we ready to hear the little green men theory?
Yes, I want to hear the little green men theory.
Which involves our friends from the Soviets. So this is all going on during the Cold War. At the time,
Right.
World War II had actually just ended. So a lot of people from Nazi Germany and the Nazi regime were pretty much being hunted at this point. There was, I'm not even going to say pretty much. They were being hunted, and it was really crazy, especially the big key players in the Nazi regime. And a lot
This
of
is post World War II, right?
yes, post World War
Yeah.
II. Yes.
Now, this also, are you going to talk about Project Paperclip any?
Yes, actually.
Ooh, interesting. I love Project Paperclip.
Yes.
Don't want to jump ahead, but I love Project Paperclip.
Project
Very interesting.
Paperclip. I very recently found out about Project Paperclip. I know that seems like a conspiracy theorist 101 that you have to know, but I very recently found out about it through a rabbit hole that we're not going to get into on this, but I was shocked. I was shocked, and I have a lot of questions. So apparently this group in Nazi Germany, they had actually developed a disc-shaped flying machine that could go undetected. So the Soviets actually capitalized on kind of where Nazi Germany was at, and they went in, and it wasn't clear whether they took it or, whether they were like, hey, you're kind of in a bad spot right now. You come work for us. We're going to protect you, because that's how that shit works.
Yep.
It's either money or protection, or both is how you get people.
Oh, it's knowledge. And knowledge breeds power, which breeds money. I mean,
yes.
That's kind of the way it goes. I mean, that's kind of the basis for Project Paperclip.
It's kind of the unholy trinity right
Yeah.
there that started Project Paperclip. So the Soviets gained access to this dish-shaped flying machine that could go undetected by radar. So the Soviets were actually concerned of the atomic bomb and the status of the Cold War and it becoming hot one day. So they were actually really kind of sweating, thinking like, please do not drop a bomb on us because they had seen what it had done. It
Yeah.
knocks out entire cities or
Levels them.
towns. Levels it, just completely levels it. So what they wanted to do was they wanted to send a warning to Truman that they could do a UFO hoax and we can get your people to believe it. So it's believed that the Soviets may have dispatched these, dish-shaped machines from a mothership. Yes, the word used is mothership in
Yikes.
Alaska. And the aliens, quote unquote aliens, were 13 at the oldest. Maybe they're thinking like 13 and under because they were 3 to 4 feet tall. And they were surgically and or biologically altered to give them enlarged head and eyes by none other than Joseph Mengele.
Insane. I mean, it's an insane theory. It's terrifying. But the most terrifying part of it is it could actually happen.
It totally can happen.
You would believe this would be something that the Soviets this time, especially with Joseph Mengele,
Oh, yes.
at their disposal, this is something they would do. I mean,
Oh,
as
absolutely.
crazy as it is, that's something that you could believe.
Oh, absolutely. Because I remember, like, even very, very young, and this was like, I was a teacup size. I still remember like having older family members of mine going, those darn Russians. And we know we're not there now, but like there was a
Yeah.
point in time and it really stuck with a lot of people that, like the Soviet, like, I mean, yeah. Anyway. And then, Joseph Mengele, who is a horrible bastard, performed human experiments on people underneath Hitler and just did all kinds of horrific medical experiments and just things that we can't even get into on here. So to think about, pretty much at the time, the two biggest evils in the world coming together, that's terrifying.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's the thing with like things like Operation Paperclip, is these the people that we did employ during that operation are these people who were obviously Nazi sympathizers and had an allegiance to Adolf Hitler. But the thing was, Adolf Hitler brought these people together because of the knowledge and the extremes they're willing to go to kind of push the boundaries of all this research that he was pushing for. So when it comes down to something like that, these are very intelligent people who have shown that they are willing to go to extremes to chase whatever they're researching. So if at the end of the day, we can end the war, these people disperse, and it's either we're going to have to find some way to convince them to work with us, by it be freedom and money, or they align with our enemies and then become another threat we have to concern ourselves with. So, I mean, that's kind of the idea behind Project Paperclip is you kind of have to take into account these different scenarios and kind of work with evil sometimes.
See, that hits me in a really moral qualm because like I don't know. I believe in law and ethics, but I also don't like it when people are imposing their own ethics for the general public, if that makes sense. That's already a hot topic. But I don't know. I could see why. Yes, I could see it because you never want to waste a mind like that. If we had wasted Einstein,
exactly, yeah,
then yeah. But I don't know where I stand on that one.
Wernher von Braun. I mean, like,
I just don't know.
It's stuff like this. I mean, you take these people who may not be necessarily the best people in the world or have the best morals, but they're intelligent and they have a large knowledge base and it's valuable, and it's either you harness it or someone else does, and you don't want to be on the receiving end.
Yeah, because we may have got a UFO hoax.
Yeah, exactly.
Surgically or biologically altered 13-year-olds in there.
Right. And that's horrifying just to think of. Like
oh
that,
my god.
That being the fate these kids were subjected to, altered and crammed into a a ship and shot off over the United States.
And purposely landed too.
Right. And that's
Like,
one thing that gets me is like, so, the problem I have with that theory is, these kids are subjected to this horrifying experiment where they're have unimaginable things done to them, and then they're going to be crammed into this object, this flying machine. And to fly something, I mean, it takes a certain level of precision and know-how to pilot something. I mean, and then for them to be launched from Alaska to then crash in New Mexico, I mean, they'd have to have been piloting it, right?
oh yeah.
I mean, controlling it in some way. I mean, that's the biggest problem I have with that whole theory is just that were these like willing participants to get in this thing and like, okay, we have to fly it now. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know. That's the biggest problem I have with the little green men theory is that
Yeah.
these kids were subjected to these horrifying experiments and then flew a craft. I guess there could be some sort of remote control. I imagine maybe would be the answer to that.
I just don't know.
Some form of remote control from a hub somewhere.
I just don't know if technology would have been that advanced.
I don't know either. Yeah, I don't know. And then we were so aware of what was going on around us at this time because out of fear, anytime you're scared. I mean, you can take like as an example, if you're in a dark room and you're afraid, you suddenly become aware of everything around you. And at this time, the United States, we were so alarmed and alert that I don't know if you could have just flown a craft into our airspace without us knowing or reacting.
Right. Well, they said the good thing about this disc-shaped flying machine that they got from the Nazi Germany group was that it could go undetected.
Oh, wow.
It could go undetected from radar. However, the source of this story, who was an engineer at Area 51 in the 1950s, he actually stated that the aircraft was detected very, very far north from where it actually crashed. I think it actually was detected somewhere in Nevada, like before it actually reached New Mexico. So it didn't go completely undetected. Another thing about this source was he was one of the people to examine this craft as well. So he says they stated that on the inside, on the interior of the craft, there was Russian writing stamped on a ring around the interior of the craft. So like imagine you're standing in it, all along the walls and like this ring is Russian writing.
Now, wouldn't that kind of defeat the whole purpose?
Right. But at the same time, like if the Soviets are wanting to send a message to Truman that they can do this, it would make sense to kind of out yourself about that. Yeah. But it also wouldn't make sense to not release that information to the public.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it makes sense because I mean, like, you don't want to be saying like, "Hey, these our enemies have the capability to launch a flying machine into our airspace and crash in New Mexico." Because then it's like, well, what's next? A bomb?
Yeah.
Load a bomb on one of these things and shoot it across our airspace into Chicago or something. I mean, that's the fear there. But I mean, I feel like the whole printing Russian inside, if they're trying to incite a panic, there's an extraterrestrial invasion. I feel like outing themselves by putting Russian in it would be kind of counterintuitive.
Yeah,
that's just my 2 cents. I don't know. I find this theory, this version of events to have a lot of holes in it.
It does. Well, and
terrifying.
It's really terrifying. Then what's really terrifying is this next one, because when the source was asked, why do you think President Truman wouldn't come out and say that this was, the Russians who had, brought this craft in and had, done human experimentation on children to, make us believe that this was a UFO. His response was, quote, "We are all doing the same thing," end quote, in relation to human experimentation by the Department of Defense and the Atomic Energy Commission.
Well, that's ominous.
It's, I don't like that at all. I don't believe it. Huh? I don't want to believe that.
No, I
don't believe it.
Yikes.
Because that's really scary.
Yeah, very.
I'd rather get disappeared. a human
Well, that's
experience.
the
Maybe
thing.
that's what happens when you get disappeared.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of a theory, a conspiracy, is that a lot of the missing people that 'cause there are a large number of people go missing in the United States every year. What if they're just scooped up and taken off for experimentation? I mean that's kind of a scary thing to think about. But I mean, I wouldn't put past our government. I mean, we do some shady shit. A lot of times, the American people are subject to that shady shit. So I don't know.
Yeah. Oh,
Very
well,
interesting.
that's very interesting.
And scary, which a lot of these conspiracies are. Very interesting, yet very scary.
But later on, this source would later go on to recant his statements about the Soviets being involved in the Roswell crash landing. So there was an entire book written on this shit, by the way, on his specifically on his version of events. It is actually called Area 51, but it's a very, very well written book. It not only goes into what happened at the Roswell crash landing, it also goes into how the Area 51 came to be. It exposes some secrets as well, or some secrets, we'll say. So the book is called Area 51, Uncensored History of America's Top Secret Military Base. It's a fabulous read. It's a long read. You're going to have nightmares, but it's wonderful.
Interesting. And what was it again?
Area 51, an uncensored history of America's top secret military base.
And who is that by?
Annie Jacobson.
Isn't that? I think I've had that book before. It's a big, thick boy.
Yeah, it's a really. If you haven't had it, you've definitely seen it at my house, because for a while I was really hardcore heavy into that book.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I have that one.
I definitely got some more red yarn on my on my plot board after that one. So just to leave you guys with a little bit of tidbit, because like I said, there's still stuff being found out at the Roswell crash landing out on the ranch, or at least there was in 2004.
Ooh.
So in 2004, 11 miles from the crash site, so roughly near the same ranch or on the same ranch, 11 miles from it, there was what's called the Roswell rock that was found. It's a uniform in color. It's actually a reddish brown rock. It's a triangle in shape, triangular, so it doesn't make like a full triangle, but it's kind of like a slanted triangle. It's really cool. So what's interesting about this is the symbols are actually protruding from the rock. So it's coming out of the rock. Like the symbols are not carved in, they're not etched in. They are coming out of the rock itself. It was formed in the rock during like the natural things that happen when rocks are made. So it has a circular design on it, which consists of the circular design, and then there's some spheres and crescent moons. It actually looks like two full moons and then two crescent moons kind of mirroring one another inside this sphere. And it's a really cool design. But what is very interesting about this design is that the same design was found in the south of England in a crop circle in 1996.
Oh, interesting.
Over 5,000 miles away, the same design was found in a giant ass crop circle.
That is interesting.
It's
never heard of that. That's super interesting.
So, and even more so, this rock actually reacts to magnetic properties. In the video that I saw also on the History Channel, this guy has the magnet and he is like moving the magnet around, and the rock is moving with the magnet, almost following it.
Wow.
And that was just crazy to see. A lot of people think that the rock is a hoax, that someone maybe carved it, etched it, sandblasted it even, and left it there for somebody to find. People think the same with the crop circle as well, that, someone went out and did that and, just left it for someone to find. But it still doesn't explain how you get the same two designs there. Because, I mean, it's not a normal design, guys. It's not. Like, you would not find this. I mean, maybe today, because it's been out there, you wouldn't have found that on like any sort of advertising or, stockpile or anything like that. Like, it's not normal. And to find it over 5,000 miles away and in two different, how many years is it? 8 years apart from one another. It's crazy. It's super crazy.
That's just really interesting. So I've never heard of that. And that is Just super interesting to think of that.
It's crazy. But the thing
Design.
is they actually kind of disproved all the disprovers. They proved that it was like something. It's not a replica. It's not something that, or not a replica. It's not something that is man-made, because what they actually did was they compared it to a sandblasted replica. So they actually made a replica of this rock, and they put it under a microscope and compared it to the Roswell rock. And it's not only made of completely different material, but where you can see where the sandblaster carved in, or where the design was carved in under the microscope, the Roswell rock, there are no cuts. It is completely smooth. It's kind of like the crystal skull, where you can't, like, you would see if this thing was carved, and you cannot see anywhere where this is carved. You can't see anything like that. So it's a mystery. We don't know what this is.
I'm definitely going to look it up because I've never heard of that. And that's
It's
super
really
interesting.
cool.
Yeah, it's really cool.
It's really cool. I was doing a little bit of extra research, and I saw Roswell rock, and I went, okay, you got my attention. And then I found it, and I was like, oh shit. So, because I'm a huge rock collector, so if I would have found that, I would find an alien rock. That'd be a cool addition to my oddities.
A nice replica of this one would be cool.
It's
That'd be a
cool.
neat thing. Yeah,
It's really
looking at that some
interesting.
more. Yeah, so so the Roswell crash, we know that something definitely happened out there. And I think an interesting
Something.
little tidbit here I don't want to get too much into it because I think this is something we could kind of save for a future episode. But we're obviously here from Ohio, and
Oh,
just south of us is Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton,
yes.
Ohio, which is rumored to hold the wreckage from Roswell, the actual
Yes.
wreckage.
Oh my gosh, Tyler, this is what I get for not writing things down. Yes, in a book called The Day After Roswell. It is a wonderful, wonderful book as well. I listened to it on audiobook. They go into, because the person who saw the wreckage from Roswell actually saw it at Wright-Patterson, and they actually went in to say that they saw the actual alien body that was in there. It was like in a crate, and then it had like glass over top of it, so it was like double sealed. Which, if it smells that bad, you're gonna double seal it. But they also said the same thing. They said that the large head, the large eyes, 3 to 4 feet tall, skinny build. And they went into it as well. So The Day After Roswell, that is by William J. Barnes, and it's a really good book. But yes, they were the ones that saw the wreckage at Wright-Patterson, which there's also a thing out there that says Wright-Patterson may be Area 51, and it's just the
Yeah,
cover for it.
that's very because I think Right Pat is something we should definitely cover in a future episode because there's a lot of things that, like, a lot of conspiracies you'll read about, and they oftentimes will include something was taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, or that's kind of where a lot of things are. Like I even was reading some stuff about Bigfoot the other day. I remember talking about how, like, reading a bit about during the there was some wildfire out west. It was huge in the 90s. Just there's a lot of wildfires out west, but there was a wildfire out west, and I remember reading like a Army Reserve unit found like a dead, burnt Bigfoot,
Oh
and
my
it was
god.
recovered and taken to Wright-Patterson and stuff. So I mean, it's very interesting. I mean that's always an interesting concept too, as the Area 51 may just be a attention magnet.
Yeah.
People know. I mean, Area 51. I mean, it's kind of a joke in itself, where it's like, ooh, this isn't. There's nothing there, but there's obviously something there.
Oh,
And
yeah.
maybe that's just part of the ploy. Is like, now all of our attention's like, wait, they don't want to see this. Let's look there.
Oh,
All
yeah.
the while our heads are turned, and there's something going on. At Wright-Patterson Airfield, which is the complete opposite of Area 51, because Area 51 you can't even get within a certain proximity of it, but Wright-Patterson Air Force Base you can go take like a field trip there in like third grade. I mean, it's insane. But a lot of stuff ends that is taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, so it would be a good cover, because it would be very unsuspecting for stuff to be there. But there's a lot of evidence that some major artifacts are at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base.
I just want to go up and look around. Like, I don't I don't have anything to do. I just
I
want to
mean,
look.
Wright Patterson. I mean, if you want to go look at Wright Patterson Air Force Base, you can like do it anytime. That's the crazy thing
I know,
about
but
it.
I want to go inside though.
Yeah,
Like I want to go inside in the
yeah.
archive room and whatnot. So
Uh,
I'll be like, my father works in nuclear power. They'll be like, ma'am, please leave the building. Like, please leave the premises.
uh,
But that was Roswell.
the
Um,
crash.
the crash. Roswell, the crash. And oh boy, there is probably stuff that I have missed. Please comment on it
Yeah,
because we can always look stuff up.
yeah.
Um,
Like I said, I think this the just the subject of Roswell is going to be something we have to visit multiple occasions because
oh, absolutely.
there's just a lot to it.
I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a few undisclosed come out of this one as well, because
Yeah,
there was some information that I did find very, very interesting that was just kind of off the wall and didn't really fit, but it was very interesting nonetheless.
yeah.
So
That's perfect fodder for undisclosed right there.
yes, we probably will have some undisclosed coming out of this. And definitely revisiting this subject of Roswell. I just want to go to the town now, really. I want to see where it all happened. I want to go to the alien diner.
Yeah, I just want to go get some cool souvenirs for my collection. That's all I want. So
Yeah.
I'm fine with that. But yeah, that was interesting. We definitely dove deep in that. There's a lot of things I never knew about. I didn't know all the behind the scenes players that were involved in this, or the Roswell Rock. I mean, I didn't know about that. So that's interesting. That's kind of stuff you're going to get here at Cult Talk Conspiracy. Is we're going to try to dive deep, and we're going to try to pull out stuff that you maybe haven't heard or isn't as talked about as much, and put it all here. 'Cause, me and Bailey talked about very early on the idea behind Cult Talk Conspiracy is I want whatever we're covering to be the episode on whatever we're covering. If we're talking about Roswell the Crash, I want this to be the episode, the definitive Roswell the Crash episode, where if you don't know about Roswell the Crash, you come here and you leave knowing all about Roswell the Crash.
Yes.
So that's kind of the idea behind Cult Talk Conspiracy, and that's why we're going to dive so deep into things. But this has been a great first episode, Bailey. I mean, this is good.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you
Way
all
way to
for
kick things off with
Yay!
something as
I'm
big as Roswell.
I'm excited. It was definitely it was a beefy boy. I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
that. It was a lot, and there's still more to come out of that one. But I wanted to start us off with a bang, and I think we've accomplished that.
Yeah,
And,
mission
I hope
accomplished.
you
Yeah.
all I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope you guys learned something.
And we're
Uh,
definitely going to have to find a way to link these books and stuff too, because
oh, absolutely.
I
These
think
books are
he
amazing.
wants to
All these
research
books
any of
you
this
can
stuff.
find on Audible as well.
Oh, love Audible.
I love
Audible
Audible
should
so
sponsor
much.
us. I want to try to get an
They
Audible
really
sponsorship.
should.
That,
Ben,
that's my goal. Is let's get an Audible sponsorship here at some point in Cult Talk Conspiracy.
I would love that because Ben has read like 11 Warhammer books on Audible, just all on
Yeah.
Audible. We've actually we haven't stopped buying books, but a lot of the ones that like our take to work books are now just on Audible.
Oh yeah, I got wait because I did Kindle for a minute, and I also would like kind of like impulse buy some books.
Yeah.
And I'd buy a book and it would sit there. I'd crack it open, read a couple chapters, never get through it because I don't have time. But the cool thing about Audible is like I listen to them on the way to work or all at work. So,
Yes.
God, we're already talking like we're sponsored from Audible. We're not, but please, Audible,
This is free.
reach out. We'd love to get a sponsorship from Audible. I might have to have Mike look into that.
Yes, the
Yeah.
Michael will look into
Yeah.
it. But
Tell
all
Mike.
these books available on Audible. Even if you can't get them on Audible, I have the Area 51 and Uncensored History. I have that one in person, and that was on Amazon. You can find that one really easy. Out of all of these, if you read just a single one of them, I would definitely say read the Roswell Legacy. That is probably because that's eyewitness accounts from Jesse Marsaul and his family,
Right.
which is amazing. So read all of them, but if you only can read one, that's probably the one that I would pick.
So there you guys have it. That was File 001, Cult Talk Conspiracy in the books, Roswell, the Crash. And, of course, just episode 1. And we got, episode 2 will be here not next Tuesday, but the following Tuesday. This is a bi-weekly podcast releasing every Tuesday. And next week, I'm going to be taking the helm.
Yes.
And I'm going to be dropping some information on a very high-profile aviation mystery / tragedy, I guess. It's MH370, Malaysian Flight 370. So we're going to be diving deep into what might have happened to the Malaysian Airlines Flight 370 on its ill-fated flight. Going to find out what might have happened and what people believe may have happened. So that's going to be pretty interesting. I'm excited to do that. And it's not something I even like I kind of work in the aviation field, but like I'm not super into all this stuff. And I mean, it definitely wasn't on my list of things initially. Like I really don't even know how I landed on just like
Haha.
just kind of yeah. I don't know how I got to it. Like it's not something that's really in my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
I'm much more toward cryptids and aliens and stuff like that. And for whatever reason, I don't remember how I got to it, but I started like tapping into it, and I was like, wow, this is really interesting and really scary and really mysterious. So I picked up on it.
It scared me because I remember when this was actually happening, and like I just remember just a constant what the fuck is happening.
Yeah, it was wild.
It's crazy. So I'm excited for that. I hope you guys get excited for that.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to drop it on and like go deep into it. 'Cause it's very interesting and a lot of twists, a lot of turns. But that's it for file 001, Cult Talk Conspiracy, Roswell, the crash. So Bailey, I think without further ado, I mean that's it. It's in the books. Episode 1 is done. Our big debut episode. It's unsealed.
It is unsealed. It is out for the world to listen and hopefully enjoy.
Yeah. We hope you guys continue to come back here and listen because it's just episode 1, but we have a lot of stuff in store. We want to grow. We want this podcast to pick up and be whatever be the best conspiracy podcast it can be. So of course we want you guys to reach out and give us your critiques and let us know if we missed anything. And if you have any suggestions for future episodes, by all means let us know. And the best place you can do that is on all of our social media platforms, be it Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, or YouTube. You can find us very easily at Cult Talk Net. And I think if I haven't already, we're going to start a r/Cult Talk Net or no r/Cult Talk Conspiracy. We'll do. And,
is that Reddit?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I was getting ready to say I said Reddit on Occultober, so I really hope we have Reddit.
Yeah, we have a Reddit. We have we're on there as a user. We're u/Cult Talk Net.
Okay.
But I'll have to start a forum. I'll start an r/Cult Talk Conspiracy, and also want to make an r/Cult Cult of Lore. But there you guys have it. That was it for file 001. Make sure you reach out to us at Cult Talk Net. Let us know what you guys think. What happened in the desert in 1947 in Roswell, New Mexico? We want to hear your theories or any information you might have that we can add onto this. But Bailey, I think that's it for this episode.
I think that it
for
is
our very first episode. So
that is the first episode. All in the books. Oh, I'm gonna get teary.
Been a long time coming, and here we are. We're finally wrapped on it. So
yes, finally here. Thank you all so much. Thank you all from the bottom of our hearts. We truly love you guys here at the Cult Talk Net households. We really do.
Yeah.
When we get your guys' messages and people reaching out to us and whatnot, like we really do read those. The whole group reads them.
Yeah.
I cry. I cry when I read them. There's been a lot of tears. But we really
Bailey cries a lot, so it doesn't take much. But
I'm an emotional being.
But there you have it. That was it. So I've been Ty.
I've been Bailey.
Thank you for listening. And as always,
question everything.